Okay, so let's start from here. Heter Mechirah. Heter Mechirah gets more authority by adding extrinsic reasons. Klomar, meaning the Shas of Chagodo, a situation of very big dochak, very great pressure. Yesh mokom lamar shami baldei mechir yeshet. And without the mechsel, it's mutar. Haresh naimi tzirufim. These are two cases in which we even assuming line that Shemittah B'Zan says Rabbanan and are lenient. Al b'shatz Chagodo. Some Yochim Makam Rabim, Alpha B'Shem Locha goes to Yochim. In Shas Chak, with major Shas Chak, relying on an individual, as long as that individual is a legitimate posek, of course. Even though Locha is not like that, Yochim. Okay. Especially when this is the Rabbanan. Right? Shvis B'Zman is Emi Rabbanan. And Shemittah is certainly no, according to most poskim, as we saw, is a Rabbanan. And evidently there are some Rishonim, and I never heard of this before. But he says here, big guns, Harazah, the Bambar, the Ravid, the Ode, Rei Lamala, Mishabal, Yobos, ain't Shemittah no Heges Cloud. There's no Shemittah over, there's no Yodim. Afim be Rabbanon. Midas Chasidus Bilvad. It's only Midas Chasidus. That's the case. It's the Shas of Chagodo. We can rely on those opinions and say, okay, we don't have to be Chasidim. Alhamdulillah, Tzir of Zeh agree Engel, Rias Engel, but it's 29, and a Grai Cook, Misha Konsin Sam Gimel. Bays are known to where their taxes. Klomar, meaning, Machris Rabbiana. Rabbiana announced, Puku Bazar B'Shvius, go out and plant during Shemittah, B'Shum known because of the tax you have to pay. So Tais asked, how can you be matin the rights for taxes? They said two answers. Aleph Shvis Mzana said the Rabbana. Which means in our day and age, the Rabbana Rashi. So it's like hey mamu, right? They asked it, but they said for no, it's okay. Based on Pikuach Nefesh is over. Pikuach Nefesh is involved. The king demands from them the taxes. They don't have what to pay, so then they get taken prisoner, and Mason and they die in prison. This is a very dangerous place. So, L'tshuva Rishon, according to the first response, which is to Rabbanan, has my kavachomer. It should be a kavachomer. B'shum b'tashlume missing itiru. If you allow people to work in land in order to pay taxes, certainly you should allow this for the essential parnasa. Of thousands of families, and the sustaining of the settlements. That they should not go to ruin. However, nevertheless, the various different sides were said to not accept this heter of the taxes. Raya of Yanis neged heter, and a typical proof against this leniency, Omer Hagon Rabdavi Karlin, Ksumim Falashimim. He means derived from Sukkim, which is rare in halachic literature. It says here, in Paskin Nehemiah, we're slaves, this land which you gave us. And so it gave our fathers to eat of its fruit and its goodness. We're slaves on it. And from its grain, most of it goes to the kings. In other words, to the authorities. That you put upon us in our sins. And who rule on our bodies. Nevertheless, even despite that, we make a covenant and we write when we toshish shvis. We're going to leave the land fallow during Shemitah. Even though we have to pay taxes, we're going to be giborei koyach, and we're going to keep the Shemitah nonetheless.
Yeah, but that's how we don't learn from Nach.
Yeah, is it right? We would think so, but evidently, since that would be to learn halacha. But a raya against a shita, you can bring for nach. You can't derive halacha from nach. You can say, look, obviously, despite the fact that they're Shas Chak, we see our forefathers were not makel in this, so it's precedent not to be makel. Okay. But what you're saying is it would be the response. The response would be, okay, we don't learn from Nach. Obviously, that'd be the response. But Rav Zevin Karliner, it's pretty. I don't know if it's creative, but it's pretty impressive that he brings this evidence. He says, look, Hamisol didn't rely on the Shas Chak Heter. How can you now, Bisman Hazeh, rely on the Shas Chak Heter? You know better than the time of Nehemiah. Hare or Ezra. Hare Sha'af, we may Ezra Yam Master Anona. The days of Ezra, they also had this text. It's what they kosher now. It's the most difficult way. They didn't allow because of this. Just because that, they didn't allow it. Like Zuin the Kudas had Gosha Shabachozos. Perhaps that's the emphasis in the passage. Says, nevertheless, Afuno saying Chilukim Shem Ben Arnonos Rabbiani Arnonos Acheros. So David Karliner also says the Arnona which Rabbiani was talking about is not the Arnona which we have nowadays. But Chamei Achem is Tam Kubachozos says so other authors did rely on the base of Arnona. Akopaim B'Torah Tziruf V'Snif, at least to join it together and make it a branch. In other words, an additional component. Heter Mechirah to the Heter Mechirah. In other words, even if you don't want to make it the primary the basis of a heter, maybe you can tack it on. That's like an external reason to be lenient. L'maisis kimul heter mechir b'shmita shel shnas tarmat hagoyim Rabbi Yisrael Yoshua Kutna, Rav Shmuel Moyelever, Rav Shmuel Zanvil Klefish Mivarsha. This tarmat was 1889. And that was obviously before Rav Kook comes on the scene. So these Gaonim of Muramatet, Utnai Hitnu, they made a stipulation. She had started to term Rabbi Yitzchak Chana Mikov. Rabbi Yitzchak Chana was the Gadol Ador, of course, would be Matir. Vuitz Tarit. And he did join to that. Avinu, but they made another stipulation. Shishtar Mechir Kosvich, the Vua Bezer Yerushalayim. Pias Kamasam. The Shtar Mechir should be in the base in Yerushalayim and based on their agreement. Rabbanei Yerushalayim lo iskimu. The Rabbanim in Yerushalayim did not agree. Either on the contrary, Yatsu b'chruz neged. I assume the head of those Rabbanim was the Shmuel Salant, who was the rabbi in Yerushalayim. Probably started to too. Although he hasn't seemed to take any Sfardim into account, which is typical, but okay, he hasn't made. So the Gdalech Chutz La'aretz Aser and V'tziv, Rabbi Yosef David Solov Leichik, that's based on Levi, Reb David the Karlin, they all asked it. Shnitas Tarnav, 1896. By Shukva Chadash Christ, and the new colonization, right, so it was already more developed. Evidently, it was worse at that point. In other words, the yeshuv is small, so they make do. They buy our produce. The yeshuv is big, so that's so easy to get by. Besides, if the yeshuv is small and it's from, you can get by. The yeshuv is large and not so from, it's not so easy. So, but anyway, the greatest of Chacham Eretz Yisrael, Rabbi Yeshua Leib Diskin or Rabbi Brisk. He was the Rabbi Brisk before the Beis HaLevi, the Mariel Diskin. Heter Mechirah. He allowed Heter Mechirah. Apio Fanim Shitzir Rabbo Shel Yafo, based on the procedures which the rabbi of Yafo at the time, the predecessor of Rav Kook, Naftali Herzl Levi, set out. Real Rosh Perklam based. Heter Zem B'chum Yikar Perosay Lonos. Shena Tuna Avodos. This Heter was primarily based on the based on for fruit of the tree, fruit of the trees, and not for fields. I guess because the trees, a lot of the different trees anyway, are to sustain the trees, not in order to cultivate them. So it's not as severe as for grain. Also, there's a problem with sfichim by grain, right? If you have problem sfichim, things which grow during Shemitah, grain which grows during Shemitah is also the Rabbanan, the grain which grows even wild. So therefore, it's much harder to be matir it. Shemitah Tav Reish Samad Gimel, in the Shemitah of 1903, Nog the Heter Zechatono Shel Tali Hertz Halevi, Yosef Tzvi Halevi, his son-in-law, Abbeis Tel Aviv, who was the head, who was in Tel Aviv, I guess the Rav at that time. I guess Tel Aviv was already founded at that time. I don't think it was founded already in 1903. Maybe later it's Abbeis in Tel Aviv. Askama Shnei Gedol Yerushalayim, with Askama Tu Yerushalayim, so Shmuel Salat Umeiro Haderes. So the Shmuel Salat, perhaps he was opposed in 1889, but by 1903 he was not opposed. I don't know if Shmuel Salat was actually Rav in 1889. That was just what I thought, but could be it wasn't. I don't know. Because it could be that probably wasn't, because I'm saying since in 1996, when Shulei Diskin was in Yerushalayim, he was probably the Rav at that time, and he probably wasn't there yet in 1889. So I don't know if it was the Rav in Yerushalayim in 1889. Not sure. Anyway, so Rash Chadash is Rav Shemitah's Tara in the Shemitah of 1910. Mitzayach come ahead to Koch Adir Ka Grai Cook. Rav Cook was Matir. Sheirchibu b'seis it's called study Heter. Ben Elanos Ben Asaros was Matir both trees and fields. Ben Alacho Ben Lamaisa, whether in theory and in practice. Mitzad Sheni Yotza B'Tokef B'Oz Neged Heter. They came out with great stringency against Heter. Koach Kabir, the mighty power, Kar Ridbaz Mitzlutsk, as Mitzvas. Ridbaz came out, it goes the adversary of Rav Kook in this matter. Bisman Acharon, later on, in later times, Kurosh Machmirim Hofia Chazonish. Chazonish is now the leader of the Machmir. Sub Nitzkor Matir. But nevertheless, those who permit were victorious. It's still every Shemitah, the Rabbanut enacts the Heter Mechirah. But the limitation was imposed even by the Matiri. They only rely on the Heter, so that to say that the fruit doesn't have Kedusha Shvius, so it doesn't have to have biur and it doesn't have to be eaten, and not thrown out. And they also only matir work which is the Rabbanan. So even though Shemitah designer says the Rabbanan, but in the Rabbanan, they made a distinction between the Rabbanans and the Raisa. Avodos halalu, the avodos which are the Raisa, tzrichos leasos aidei nochli dafka. They have to be done by an Arab, by a non-Jew, sorry. B'yameinu atah, in our day and age, when the farms don't want to bring in Arab workers, this is already in the 1950s. Hakoshi korim avem lechas azriya. The main problem is planting. Haktsira b'abtsira, because harvesting, where they're harvesting grain or harvesting grapes, it's only also if you do it in the way in which the rice is only also if you do it in the way that you normally do it. So you can find ways to make a shinui, right? And do a shinui, so it's not that normal derech. And the Sefer Madani Oretz, which is Rav Shlomo Zalman, Simon Beis, Marich Lamar Hib suggests Ksira Ubetzira Bichlal Einel Avodas Karka. That harvesting is not considered to be work on the land. Begerer Kedushas Peros. It only has to do with the kedusha of the fruit. And in other words, you can't cut the potatoes, which are kedusha shvi, it's the normal way, not because of working land, but because of the kedusha potatoes shvi. So, well, now if you hold that the sale to the guy takes off the kedusha shvi, so therefore there's no problem with the normal harvesting and cutting. Rei Chuvas Hagraz Meltzer Zesham Bambu 282. This is Almond. Hasmira Dasa Graiko, pruning. And Al Shabbat Sos Mirshas Torah. It's not the same pruning that the Torah asks. Rei Mushba Kohen Sim Samach Zayin. Bekujas Achon Lo Shabbos Arts. So you have Sharich Lochias Chidusho. The Chidush Gadol who's there. There's a great Chidush says of Zevin. The Rishonim are Rishonim. Now how they define Zomer is not the way we define Zomer Bisman Hazeh. Kol Shar Avodas Shabakar Midrabana. All the other work with in land is Drabana. Nogel is Ria. But what about planting? So Chief Rabbinate sends special instructions. In all the years of Shemitah, Keita leads Naig Lamaisa. How to conduct oneself in practice. And there's these instructions are given also in terms of other blocks. I think it would be instructive for us to try and find what those horaot are and see how they work, because we don't have in front of us. He seems to be he doesn't give us a explanation of why there are certain ways of doing Zvira which are okay. So I think it would be interesting to see what those possibly are. Even though it's well based in terms of halacha, but only as a rasha. This is emphasized by the first rabbis who permitted in 1889. Rav Kook always reiterated this. And with Shemirov, Shimush Be'eter Zeh, but since people use this heter, why is so much kimat shenishtakacha over Yaraishal? It's almost been forgotten. It's temporary quality. Yofeh Asa Hapola Mizrahi. Well, Mizrahi was the primary organization of there's the Mizrahi and the Pola Mizrahi. Pola Mizrahi was the Mizrahi workers, the people who actually did the farmers. They take an effort to inculcate as much as possible as Shemittah bim Shakav in its farms, the kibbutzav and its kibbutzim moshavot. Yazdu Vadas Shemitah Rabbanim. They founded a committee for Shemitah of rabbis to paskin and oversee various melachos. Hasuras v'mutaros. Those are mutar. Kayom nis yazda v'adash Shemitah Merkavos idea of Rabbanus. So now there's a central Shemitah committee by the chief rabbinate. And Mashim Pinas Shemitah. They leave a Shemitah pit corner. The problem is Rachi, they rely on the heter. But they leave a Shemitah corner. It's like a Zeichel Shemitah. Kalkas Adam Shlo Tichnes Mechirah, a part of land, piece of land that they don't put into the sale. Misajim Shura Shukim Usim Bartzos Toranios. And they arrange an array of conventions and Torah lectures ala Shemitah. And they make regular shrim to teach, to learn Hilchos Shemitah. Yosem means that, but more than this, Osem Kibbutzim Shapoli Agudas Yisrael. As a matter of fact, Kfar Chabad. I'm Kaimim Mitzvah Shemitah Kedvoim Kiksava. So Poli Aguda and Kfar Chabad. There were one or two always Aguda Kibbutzim. I think there's there or Moshavim, maybe they are. There's a Miut still exists, and maybe there's one other which I'm not thinking.
Wow.
What?
Oh, I didn't. That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's one Aguda in Moshav at least, but most of the Moshav which can Shemitah are Poli Aguda, and of course today I'm sure there are even Mizrahi kibbutzim who keep Shemitah. I don't know. We would have to try and find a list. So I think so there Mekan Shmita Dvarim Kiksava. A friend of mine, a good friend of mine, went from Shalvim to Merkaz Arab during Shemitah, and he couldn't eat the food there because in Shalvim they didn't rely on Heter Mechirah. In Merkaz Arab they did rely on Heter Mechirah because it was like that was part of their religious fealty to the chief rabbinate. Anyway, so Elish Kamvan lo kol ma she'efshar lekayim b'kibbutzim bodedim. It's not everything you can do in a few isolated kibbutzim. Efshar b'tzei b'knei midar rachav can you do on a broader basis b'chol aretz and all of Eretz Yisrael. Anu chayavim lisa meitz b'kol cholchenu. Nevertheless, we're required to make an effort with all of our strength. The sabib b'nei advarim to arrange matters. Shesof kol sof tiyah Shabbos oretz holeches v'nikbas b'chol kushasa almanas kodesh. That the Shabbos of the land should be more and more embedded in all of its sanctity on on our holy land. That is what Rav Kook has to say about it. That of course even he wanted to try and get away from that there if at all possible. Okay, second, let me stop recording here.